For years, mezcal sat in the shadow of its popular cousin tequila, known for its worm and deemed too smoky for a spot on the same shelf as premium spirits. But not anymore. Once banned and later sold in plastic jugs for pennies, the handcrafted spirit has found its way into cocktail bars and Michelin-starred restaurants. No other liquor has seen a greater increase in production in the past decade. Mezcal gets its name from the Aztec word for cooked agave, a thorny plant sacred to Mexico for thousands of years. The vast majority of mezcal is made in the southern state of Oaxaca, where family-owned distilleries dot the landscape. We went to meet the mezcaleros as they labor to quench the world's thirst for mezcal.
The story will continue in a moment.
Mezcaleros harvest agave year-round, but it's no low-hanging fruit. Pried from the earth, the spikes are removed by machete, revealing the heart, the piña, which looks like a 100-pound pineapple. Agave takes its sweet time to ripen, up to 30 years for some varieties. It grows in the valleys that run between the Sierra Madre Mountains, here in Oaxaca, the crossroads of indigenous and Spanish colonial cultures, the birthplace of mezcal. And Santiago Matatlan is its cradle. The Hernandez brothers, Armando and Alvaro, are fourth-generation mezcaleros from an indigenous Zapotec family. They learned the craft from their father, Silverio. Today they run Mal de Amor, one of Matatlan's largest distilleries, or palenques.
Nosotros hacemos el mezcal sin prisa.
We make mezcal without hurry, meaning everything in its time.
No metemos nada.
We don't add or do anything to speed up production, but we make it nonstop, 365 days a year, the entire day.
Is it different from the way your father made it?
No,
No, it's the same.
Todo, la tradición, lo que...
We conserve all the traditions, everything we were taught, and everything is done by hand.
Agave was first distilled here in the 1600s. Mexicans have been drinking mezcal at baptisms, funerals, and every occasion in between ever since. And let's clear this up early. Tequila is a type of mezcal, made with blue agave, mostly in the state of Jalisco. But most tequila has been mass-produced, made by machines since the 70s. Artisanal mezcal resists machinery. The agave is roasted in underground pits for days. Then it's crushed by horse-drawn mill. The mash is fermented in wooden barrels and distilled twice in copper vats. No temperature dials or controls. Bubbles indicate the alcohol content.
Who knows more about the process?
Él conoce más.
I think he may know more,
Yo puedo tomar más.
but I drink it more.
At Mal de Amor, they offer Napa-style tours of their agave fields. Mezcal is now a $500 million a year industry. But in the 1980s and 90s, Armando and Alvaro told us production of mezcal could barely support the family.
El precio del maguey.
The price of mezcal was very low. It was miserable.
What was it?
7 pesos un litro de mezcal.
7 pesos for a liter of mezcal.
Less than $1.
Entonces, nosotros fuimos 10 hijos.
And we were 10 children. Sunday was the only day we could afford a cup of milk and a piece of bread.
No, vámonos.
So we decided to go.
Armando left Mexico first, alone, bound for California.
Do you remember the day you left?
Sí, 3 de diciembre.
Yes. It was the 3rd of December, 1992. I was 12 years old.
Yo ahorita tengo hijos y no.
I have children of my own now, and I could never bring myself to let them cross the border alone. It was a sad goodbye,
Duele mucho dejar a la...
very painful to leave the family behind.
How did you get there?
Como todo migrante.
Con un coyote.
Con un coyote.
Like all migrants, with a coyote, smuggled across the border.
Alvaro eventually joined him in Los Angeles. They spent a decade working in bars and restaurants. When the plot twisted, artisanal became hip, and mezcal's popularity boomed. Alvaro began to dream about returning to the family business.
Ya cuando demostraba...
I had plans drawn up for the palenque, and I showed Armando.
Álvaro, llegaba con un plano de su palenque.
Alvaro came in with the plan for his palenque, and he spread it on the bed and said, I'm going to do this.
Oye, Álvaro, estás loco.
And I told him, you're crazy. How are you going to make a living?
Armando was skeptical until he noticed shots of mezcal going for $10 each. He says he looked down at the label on a bottle one day, and it was from their hometown.
And you finally told your brother, I told you so.
Te dije, tonto. Dije.
So Armando and Alvaro went back home to ramp up the family palenque. Enter John Rexer and Gilberto Marquez of the mezcal brand Ilegal, made from 100% espadín, the variety of agave that ripens the fastest.
So how far out does the illegal agave go? I mean, is this all illegal?
Yeah, there's about 2,500 plants per acre. There's about 5 acres out here.
This is a lot of espadín, right?
Today, Ilegal is one of the top-selling mezcal brands. But it too started humbly. Rexer, an expat New Yorker, was in search of a steady supply of mezcal to serve at a bar he owned in Guatemala.
I would take a bus up from Guatemala. It's a 24-hour bus ride. Along the way, you can pull a string in that bus and say, I want to stop here. Walk to a village, wait until lights came on somewhere and say, hey, do you know anybody who makes good mezcal around here? And invariably, someone would have an uncle, a brother, a cousin.
Tengo un tío.
Tengo un tío. Sí, yeah, that's exactly it.
Everybody has an uncle.
As the name on the bottle suggests, Rexer's operation wasn't exactly legal.
Is it true that you once dressed like a priest to have to get this across a border?
Listen, I went through 12 years of Catholic school.
Me too.
I knew how to play the role.
It was his friend, Gilberto Marquez, who introduced him to the Hernandez brothers.
And we rolled down here, and it was very, very, very tiny, and they were making very small amounts.
Y me dice, ¿tienes más de este mezcal? Dimos, sí.
And he asks me, do you have more of this mezcal? And we said, yes. We have 10,000 liters. And it took us like 2 years to make.
Y nos dice John, lo quiero todo.
And John says to us, I want it all.
A sidebar, and this may go without saying, but Rexer has swigged his fair share of mezcal.
Excuse me.
Do you want a water? Yeah, no, take a break, you're good. Just like, do I want a water?
You know, there's an expression, the best mezcal is the one in front of you. It's not entirely true. You don't want to cover it in smoke. You want to taste the agave.
A lot of people say they don't like mezcal because of the smoke.
Obviously, you're in a smoky environment, right? When you dig up the pit oven, there's smoke everywhere. So there's a lot of early mezcals that came into the States that are heavy smoked.
Has mezcal gotten a bad rap on that front?
I think in the early days it did, but people began to discover, no, the agaves have particular unique flavors.
Rexer asked brothers Armando and Alvaro to go into business, and he made a promise. If they could produce the mezcal, he'd sell it around the world. They'd been burned by false promises before, so they weighed his offer in their native language.
You spoke in Zapotec so he wouldn't understand?
Yo le decía a Álvaro, oye, en Zapoteco.
I said to Alvaro in Zapotec, do you believe him? And he said, I don't know.
Pues vamos a ver.
But we figured, let's see.
I said, listen, I'll pay you up front so that we can get started.
2 días después teníamos el depósito.
2 days later, we had the deposit in our account for all 10,000 liters. He said, each month I'll keep making deposits. So we made more, 500 liters, 1,000, 2,000,
Quiero 10,000.
and it grew like that.
Now their partnership produces 3,000 bottles of mezcal a day, almost all of them for export. And every bottle is certified by the Mexican government, stamped with a hologram to mark denomination of origin, like champagne or cognac. We'd heard there are rules about how to drink this artisanal mezcal. The good stuff isn't for shots or diluting in cocktails. It's for sipping. So we asked Marquez, the former bartender who now promotes Ilegal.
Favorite way to drink it?
Spicy margarita.
Oh, wait a second. I thought you weren't supposed to drink mezcal in a margarita.
You do want to enjoy mezcal neat, but there's nothing wrong with having it in a cocktail, especially if we're trying to get folks to try it for the first time. It's an introduction to mezcal.
Marquez poured us a joven, the colorless mezcal you'll find in most bottles.
This is 100% espadín.
So joven means young.
Joven means young, unaged.
Salud.
Salud.
This one tastes spicy to me.
So smoke is not the first thing that you taste?
It's definitely there, but I would not call this smoky.
Yes.
Aging mezcal is a Mexican tradition. Ilegal does it in American oak, the same way bourbon is made.
So this is the añejo, and this is aged 15 months.
Color's definitely darker.
Yep.
Wow, so good. How would you drink this one?
Absolutely neat, 100%.
Has anyone ever said to you, hey, what's a gringo like you doing
In a place
selling
like this.
Oaxaca,
Yeah.
Oaxacan mezcal?
Yes, I've gotten pushback over the years, you're a foreigner. But I'm someone who fell in love with the rhythm and the pace of Oaxaca and fell in love with mezcal.
He's no longer the only foreigner in this partnership. Bacardi, the largest privately held global spirits company, acquired Ilegal last year in a deal worth a reported $100 million.
When we started to grow the brand, one of the questions I asked myself was, how do you fall in love with something and then not destroy the thing you fell in love with by making it grow?
Can you do that with an international conglomerate like Bacardi?
I think it's a great question because it's not just the beautiful liquor, but it's certain things that we're trying to preserve and believe in. This is a family business. We have to respect the artisanal production. We can never let this become industrial.
What does the deal with Bacardi mean for you?
Pues lo que va a cambiar es la vida de muchos.
What's going to change is many people's lives in this community.
Es un beneficio a la comunidad.
It's a benefit for the whole community.
The Palenque now employs 100 people from Matatlan and beyond, including their 87-year-old father, the mezcalero emeritus.
Que se siente en la silla de
Armando and Alvaro translated from Zapotec to Spanish. We asked what Señor Hernandez thought of his son's mezcal.
Does it live up to the family name? See?
That's why I drink it. If not, I wouldn't drink it.
The Hernandez brothers are expanding the family Palenque. Construction is already underway.
So if there's the American dream, is this the Mexican dream?
Sueño mexicano. Sueño mexicano. Sí, es el sueño
It's the
mexicano.
Mexican dream.
Como te digo, jamás.
It's something we never imagined.
When we come back, how mezcal tourism in Oaxaca is helping to fuel the economy, even as some producers fear it's all moving a bit too fast. Oaxaca, a diverse patch of 4 million people on the southwest curl of Mexico's tail, may be one of the country's poorest states, but it boasts one of the fastest growing economies. Both pillars of that economy, agriculture and tourism, have been revitalized by the explosion in global demand for mezcal. Tens of thousands of Oaxacan families produce mezcal for a living, mostly in small, handcrafted batches. The deeper you travel into Oaxaca's countryside, the harder mezcaleros cling to their ancestral methods, and the louder they'll tell you there's a price to pay for this mezcal boom.
The story will continue in a moment.
Insulated by peaks and valleys, Oaxaca has its rugged terrain to thank for its diversity. The Zapotec people flourished here for nearly 1,000 years, their ancestral capital preserved at Monte Alban, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Oaxaca is home to 16 different indigenous groups, more than anywhere else in the country. The state capital, Oaxaca City, is a technicolor hub of markets and vendors, with its 16th century cathedral, Santo Domingo de Guzman, towering over the stone streets. On the coast, Puerto Escondido, the hidden port, draws surfers from around the world who come to ride a massive break in the Pacific called the Mexican Pipeline. Then there's the food. Oaxaca is called the land of 7 moles, after its rich stew made with dozens of ingredients. To wash it all down, hundreds of varieties of small batch mezcal, many made from wild agave. The most sought-after stuff is crafted deep in Oaxaca's rural communities and has tourists venturing out there. At the Real Minero Distillery, or Palenque, we met John Douglas, a bar owner who makes regular trips down from bourbon country, Kentucky.
So what gives?
It's delicious, and there's a story behind it, about flavor, about people, about histories, about, geez, how exactly is this made?
How many bottles you bring home?
Gosh, you're not the TSA, right?
Here, the agave roast is a smoky, well-choreographed ballet. Everyone knows their part. And in charge, Graciela Ángeles Carreño, a mezcalera with a reputation as a leader in the industry. Her family has been making mezcal since it was more bootleg than above board.
And your grandmother sold mezcal from the back of a burro.
So my great-grandfather produced the mezcal and my great-grandmother sold it. And why did she sell it? Because nobody inspected the women at the time. She made a special knock at the door, opened the door, and the woman with the donkey takes out her mezcal.
Opens her store.
The Carreño family distills in clay pots. 11,000 liters of mezcal a year, some 8,000 bottles. Many go for upwards of $100. Making artisanal mezcal is part science, part intuition. And it comes with a funk,
Hay mosquitos.
which we saw and smelled inside Carreño's fermentation room.
Right now it's not too fermented. You can put your mouth here and try it.
Muy amargo. Very bitter.
Sí, sí.
Sí.
Pero sientes el alcohol?
Así,
Yes, and you can taste the alcohol.
Sí, it tastes like beer. Yeah.
Carreño showed us how she knows when it's ready for the next step.
Si yo pongo mi oído,
¿Qué oís?
ahora escucha.
If I put my ear to it, listen, it's like a stomach.
Okay, it is like a stomach.
Sí.
Oh, wow. How much time left for this?
Yo creo como otros tal vez 4 días.
I think maybe another 4 days.
Aquí es donde se producen los sabores.
This is where the flavor comes.
Esto es como la parte mágica.
This is your magic.
Sí.
3 hours south of Oaxaca City, at the Perez family palenque, we met Lalo Perez, a fifth-generation mezcalero. That's the next generation holding his hand. The whole family had just pulled an all-nighter, tending the fire for their roast. A community ritual. Neighbors came by in the morning to help stack the piñas. And Lalo's father, Tío Teo, watched over.
How was the roast last night?
Around 8 in the morning, we finally started stacking the piñas.
Por eso tienes sueño, señor.
We joked about being beat from the night before, but Lalo says making mezcal doesn't feel like work.
From the moment I go out into the countryside to harvest agave, I feel like I want to taste it already.
You're smiling when you tell me this.
It's the joy that mezcal brings me. If you drink 5 glasses, it brings you even more joy.
Lalo walked us through his agave varieties with names like Madre Quiche and Tempestate. He told us each gives a unique taste: herbal, mineral, earthy. Tío Teo insisted we taste for ourselves and led us to his private stash where he keeps his prized batches.
Muy diferente. Sí, muy diferente. Wow. Tempestate is the winner.
Lalo has taken over most of the manual labor from his dad, using wooden mallets to crush the roasted agave. He distills batches of about 250 bottles at a time. But here's the thing. Mezcal produced by the Perez family can't technically be called mezcal. It is made in the right region using the right methods to qualify for denomination of origin. But Lalo told us he doesn't bother with the bureaucracy of getting it certified by government-approved regulators.
You don't put the word mezcal on your bottles to sell. Does that bother you?
On the contrary, to certify it, they practically tell you how to make your mezcal. An inspector comes and tells you, don't crush with wooden mallets. Water it down so that it'll pass lab tests. And then I'll certify it so you can sell it. We don't need a government certifier to come and tell us how to make mezcal.
There's no doubt in your mind that what's inside your bottles is mezcal.
Sí, es mezcal.
Maybe so, but Cinco Sentidos, the brand that bottles the Perez family's product for export, has to label the uncertified mezcal distilled agave. In bars around the world, that's become a selling point. Small batch enthusiasts clamor for obscure, limited-run bottles and mezcal by any other name still smells as sweet. Graciela Carreño chose to drop denomination of origin 2 years ago. Her main focus now is her plants. Once you harvest agave, that's it.
This is not like grapes. The crop does not grow back each year.
Sí, bueno, que solo se aproveche una vez en su
You can only benefit from it once in its lifetime, and it takes 30 years to give you its best.
If mezcaleros obsess over their agave, it's because they're trying to avoid repeating tequila's mistakes. Overplanting of blue agave used in tequila has rendered that plant more susceptible to disease. Carreño says she worries the same could happen to mezcal's workhorse variety, espadín.
Así como tequilana, aquí.
It's like tequila, only with mezcal we plant espadín, only espadín.
La contradicción es que cuando
The irony is on the world market, what people want most is not espadín,
si no son los otros, los
it's wild agave.
But wild agave has its own problems. As production of mezcal has increased 700% from 10 years ago, some species of agave are vanishing. So Carreño germinates the seeds from 12 varieties in her nursery. How concerned are you about the future of the agave plant in Oaxaca?
¿Por dónde empiezo?
Where do I start? On the one hand, we have economic success because this spirit that came from our community is now served in the most famous bars in the world.
Lo cual me alegra y me enorgullece como mexicana.
That makes me happy and proud as a Mexican and Oaxacan. What worries me is the environmental cost, the cultural cost, because it will not be free.
Entonces, creo que la encrucijada en este
So I think the crossroads right now is recognizing that we need to slow down a little.
Carreño told us mezcal is a reminder to take a moment. So that's what we did.
Y luego te digo cuántos grados.
Later, I'll tell you the percentage of alcohol because these are not low grade.
Oh, really? What? How many am I going to be? Bien borracha?
No, the main point is not to get drunk. It's to enjoy it.
Una botella y la
One bottle and enjoy it.
Salud.
Salud.
Y bienvenida a Oaxaca.
Muchísimas gracias. Excelente.